heaven and hell. There are three heavens. 29. There are three heavens, entirely distinct from one another: the inmost or third, the middle or second, and the outermost or first. These are in the same order and interrelation as are the highest part of a man or his head, the middle part or body, and the lotus or feet, more like the upper, middle and lowest stories of a house. In such order also is the divine that proceeds and ascends from the Lord. Consequently, from the necessity of order, heaven is threefold. 30. The interiors of a man which belong to his internal mind mens and his external mind animus are also in like order. He has an inmost, a middle and an outermost part. For when man was created, all things of divine order were brought together in him, so that he became divine order in form, and consequently, the heaven in the least form. Number sign. For this reason man, as regards his interiors, has communication with the heavens. Also he comes, after death, among angels, among those of the inmost, middle or outermost heaven, in accordance with the reception of divine good and truth from the Lord while he lived in the world. All things of divine order are brought together in man, and by creation man is divine order in form. In man the internal man was formed after the image of heaven, and the external after the image of the world, and this is why man was called by the ancients a microcosm. Thus man in respect of his interiors is by creation the heaven in least form after the image of the greatest, and such also man becomes when he has been created anew or regenerated by the Lord. 31. The divine which inflows from the Lord and is received in the third or inmost heaven is called celestial, and in consequence, the angels there are called celestial angels. The divine inflowing from the Lord and received in the second or middle heaven is called spiritual, and in consequence, the angels there are called spiritual angels. Whereas, the divine inflowing from the Lord and received in the outermost or first heaven is called natural. But, because the natural of that heaven is not like the natural of the world but has in it the spiritual and the celestial, therefore that heaven is called spiritual, and celestial natural, and in consequence, the angels there are called spiritual natural and celestial natural. Those who receive influx from the middle or second heaven, which is the spiritual heaven, are called spiritual natural, and those who receive influx from the third or inmost heaven, which is the celestial heaven, are called celestial natural. The spiritual natural and the celestial natural angels are distinct from each other, but yet they constitute one heaven because they are in one degree. There are three heavens: the inmost, the middle, and the outermost, or the third, the second, and the first. And the goods there follow also in the threefold order. The good of the inmost or third heaven is called celestial, the good of the middle or second heaven spiritual, and the good of the outermost or first heaven spiritual natural. 32. In each heaven there is an internal and an external. Those in the internal are there called internal angels, while those in the external are there called external angels. The internal and the external in the heavens, or in each heaven, have the same relation as the voluntary and its intellectual with a man. The internal being has the voluntary and the external has its intellectual. Every voluntary has its own intellectual. The one cannot exist without the other. The voluntary may be compared to a flame and its intellectual to the light therefrom. 32. In each heaven there is an internal and an external. Those in the internal are there called internal angels, while those in the external are there called external angels. The internal and the external in the heavens, or in each heaven, have the same relation as the voluntary and its intellectual with a man. The internal being has the voluntary and the external has its intellectual. Every voluntary has its own intellectual. The one cannot exist without the other. The voluntary may be compared to a flame and its intellectual to the light therefrom. 33. It ought to be clearly understood that with the angels it is their interiors which cause them to be in one heaven or another. For the more their interiors are open towards the Lord, the more interior is the heaven in which they are. There are 3 degrees of the interiors with each angel as well as with each spirit, and also with man. Those with whom the 3rd degree has been opened are in the inmost heaven. Those with whom the 2nd degree has been opened, or only the 1st, are in the middle or in the outermost heaven. The interiors are opened by the reception of divine good and divine truth. Those who are affected by divine truths and admit them at once into their life, thus into their will and thence into action, are in the inmost or 3rd heaven, and have their place in accordance with their reception of good from the affection of truth. Those, however, who do not admit truths at once into the will but into the memory and thence into the understanding, and who, from this, will and do them, are in the middle or 2nd heaven. But those who live morally and believe in a divine being, but do not care greatly about being taught, are in the outermost or 1st heaven. From this it can be confirmed that the states of the interiors make heaven and that heaven is within everyone and not outside him, as the Lord teaches when he says, "The kingdom of God cometh not with observation, neither shall they say, Lo here or lo there, for behold, the kingdom of God ye have within you." Luke XVII 20:21. Number sign. There are as many degrees of life in man as there are heavens, and these are opened after death in accordance with his life. Heaven is in man. Therefore he who has received heaven into himself in the world, comes into heaven after death. 34. Furthermore, all perfection increases towards interiors and decreases towards exteriors, since interiors are nearer to the divine, and are in themselves purer, while exteriors are more remote from the divine and are in themselves grosser. Number sign. Angelic perfection consists in intelligence, wisdom, love and every good, and in the happiness therefrom, but not in happiness without these. For without them happiness is external and not internal. Because with the angels of the inmost heaven the interiors have been opened in the 3rd degree, Their perfection immeasurably surpasses that of the angels in the middle heaven, whose interiors have been opened in the second degree. In the same way, the perfection of the angels of the middle heaven exceeds the perfection of the angels of the outermost heaven. Interiors are more perfect because nearer to the divine. In the internal there are thousands and thousands of things that appear in the external as one general thing. As far as man is raised from externals towards interiors, so far he comes into light and thus into intelligence, and the elevation is like rising out of a cloud into clearness. 35. Because such distinction exists, an angel of one heaven cannot go among the angels of another heaven. That is, no one can ascend from a lower heaven, neither can anyone descend from a higher heaven. One ascending from a lower heaven is seized with a distress amounting to anguish and is unable to see those who are there, still less can he talk with them, while one descending from a higher heaven is deprived of his wisdom, hesitates in his speech and gives up in despair. There were some from the outermost heaven, who had not yet been taught that heaven is established in the interiors of an angel, and who believed that they might come into a higher heavenly happiness simply by access to a heaven where higher angels are. They were even permitted to enter among such angels, but when they were there, they saw no one however much they searched, although there was a great multitude present. For the interiors of the newcomers had not been opened in the same degree as the interiors of the angels there, consequently neither was their sight opened. Shortly after this, they were seized with such anguish of heart that they scarcely knew whether they were alive or not. Therefore they hastily betook themselves to the heaven from which they came, glad to come again among their own companions, and promising that they would no longer desire things higher than are in agreement with their life. Again, I have seen some sent down from a higher heaven, and deprived of their wisdom until they no longer knew what their own heaven was. It happens otherwise when, as is often done, the Lord raises some angels out of a lower into a higher heaven that they may behold its glory. Then they are prepared beforehand, and are encompassed by intermediate angels through whom there is communication. From all this it is evident that the three heavens are entirely distinct one from another. 36. Those, however, who are in the same heaven can associate with anyone there, and the delights of their association are in accordance with the affinities of good in which they are, of which more will be said in the sections following. 37. Yet although the heavens are so distinct that the angels of one heaven cannot have association in their affairs with the angels of another, still the Lord conjoins all the heavens by immediate and mediate influx from himself into all the heavens, and by mediate influx from one heaven into another. Number sign he thus makes the three heavens to be one, and all to be in such connection from the first to the last, so that there is nothing that is not connected. Whatever is not connected through intermediates with the first does not continue in existence, but is dissipated and becomes nothing. Influx from the Lord is immediate from himself, and also mediate through one heaven into another. and the Lord's influx into the interiors of man is in similar order. Immediate influx of the divine from the Lord. Immediate influx through the spiritual world into the natural world. All things come into existence from things prior to themselves, thus from the first. And in like manner they continued in existence because continuing in existence is perpetual coming into existence, and therefore there is nothing unconnected. 38. He who does not know how degrees are related to divine order cannot comprehend how the heavens are distinct, or even what is meant by the internal and the external man. Most people in the world have no other idea of what is interior and what exterior, or of what is higher and what lower, than as something continuous or coherent by continuity from what is purer to what is grosser. But the relation of what is interior to what is exterior is not continuous but discrete. There are two kinds of degrees: those that are continuous and those that are not. Continuous degrees are related like the degrees of the waning of light from a bright blaze until it is obscured, more like the degrees of the decrease of vision from objects in the light to those in the shade, more like degrees of purity of the atmosphere from its depths to its highest point. These degrees are determined by distances. 2. On the other hand, degrees that are not continuous but discrete are distinguished like prior and posterior, like cause and effect, or like what produces and what is produced. Whoever looks into the matter will see that in each and all things in the whole world, whatever they are, there are such degrees of producing and compounding. That is, that from one thing comes another, and from the other a third, and so on. 3. One who does not acquire for himself a perception of these degrees cannot possibly discern the distinctions of the heavens, nor between the interior and exterior faculties of man, nor the distinction between the spiritual and the natural world, nor between the spirit of man and his body. So neither can he understand the nature and source of correspondences and representations, nor what influx is. Sensual men do not apprehend these distinctions, for even where these degrees are concerned, they make increases and decreases to be continuous. Therefore, they cannot have any conception of what is spiritual otherwise than as a pure natural. Consequently, they stand outside, and are far removed from intelligence. Things interior and things exterior are not continuous but distinct and discrete in accordance with degrees, and each degree has its bounds. One thing has been formed from another, and the things so formed are not continuously purer and grosser. One who does not perceive the difference between what is interior and what is exterior in accordance with such degrees can clearly understand neither the internal and external man nor the interior and exterior heavens. 39. Finally, respecting the angels of the three heavens, it is permissible to relate a certain arcanum which has not hitherto entered the mind of anyone because degrees have not been understood. Namely, with every single angel and also with every single man, There is an inmost or highest degree or an inmost or highest something into which the divine of the Lord first or most closely inflows and from which it disposes the other interior things which succeed in accordance with the degrees of order with them. This inmost or highest degree may be called the entrance of the Lord to the angel and to the man, and his very own dwelling place with them. It is by virtue of this inmost or highest that a man is a man and is distinguished from the brute animals, which do not have it. It is from this that a man, unlike the animals, is capable, in respect of all his interior things which pertain to his mind mens and animus, of being raised up by the Lord to himself, of believing in the Lord, of being moved by love to the Lord and thereby beholding him, and of receiving intelligence and wisdom, and speaking from reason. Also it is by reason of this that he lives to eternity. But what is arranged and provided by the Lord in this inmost does not openly inflow into the perception of any angel, because it is above his thought and transcends his wisdom. 40. These now are the general truths respecting the three heavens, but each heaven in particular is to be treated of in what follows. Next, I will post an article that says, "The heavens consist of innumerable societies." Thank you.